We are going to have some church today. Whoa, look out. All right, let me take you to another place from where you are right now. Because where you are right now, whether you realize or not, is deep in the heart of Oklahoma. Yes, we're in Oklahoma, the place where we love. It's our home, and we don't speak evil of our home. This is our nest. But a whole lot of people out there don't agree with us. And so we have to listen sometimes as they extol the places that we have visited, that we don't belong, but there we are. You say, who incarcerates more people than any other state? You say, who incarcerates more women than any other state? You say, who is not spending money on our children in the schools? You say, who is leading with this teenage pregnancy? You start saying, oh, it hurts a little bit. I recall a time I was on an airline flight from San Diego back to my home in Oklahoma. And I sat down comfortably, relishing the fact that soon I would be back home. This lady sitting next to me struck up a conversation. She asked, and where are you going? And I said, I'm going home, back home to Tulsa. And she said, Oklahoma? I said, yes, Tulsa, Oklahoma, my home. And she said, my. She said, every time I hear the word Oklahoma, I think disaster. She said, and then she started ticking them off. She talked about the bombing. She talked about the thing that was in Muskogee with the boat hitting the bridge. She talked about the indices that I just ticked off, all these things with incarceration and all the negative things. And I sat there, church, and I looked at her and listened. I looked down and looked over. Until finally she said, that's why I say what I say. And I said, yeah, but we belong to the land. And the land we belong to is grand. But church, I was feeling something else. And so I, feel that I'm not alone when we get with people, even our fellow Oklahomans, who remind us about our state and remind us that there is so much work to be done. It is important, therefore, that we have responses, because we do choose to live in this place. We do choose to be fervently healthy in this place of unhealth. So we must have something to say to people who say to us, why? I'm reminded of a young minister, a younger minister named Marlon Lavenhar. He had just got to town. And Marlon Lavenhar was establishing himself, talking with people, talking about the beliefs that he held. And someone asked him about God. And he said, God is clothed. God is clothed in the robes of events. He quoted Ralph Waldo Emerson when he said that. God is clothed in the robes of events. So the person said, okay, tell me more. And he did. I want you to listen to Brother Randy as he says what our younger Marlon Lavenhar said about God and this quote.
In this poetic line, we find a notion of God that could be recognized by the mystic, the humanist, the naturalist, the theist, and the transcendentalist alike. Unitarian Universalists are increasingly finding ways to understand notions of God that transcend traditional ideas of a white man in the clouds. As we do so, we discover that there are ways to speak about the powerful mystery at the core of life and death in creative, meaningful, and intellectual terms.
Woo! That was our boy many years ago. And he was saying something then that is relevant right now, isn't it? When we start talking about God to people, people say, well, I know what God means. Do you know what God is? And as a Unitarian Universalist, oftentimes we begin to shut down because of that challenge. But you know, our former president of the UUA, William Sinkford, asked us a long time ago to start developing our language of reverence. A language of reverence. He said, you know, we're real good with the social action model. We can tell you what we need to do. But we don't talk about the why we need to do it too much. The why. The language of reverence deals with that why. It talks about what's behind our actions. And oftentimes we as Unitarian Universalists don't like to get off into that because it reminds us of some old baggage that we brought and trying to leave alone. Some old baggage that had to do with this is the only way. And so we don't talk about that. We don't want to talk about God in that context. But Marlon is trying to tell us, look here, Ralph Waldo Emerson writing way, way, way back then had an idea. He was saying, wait a minute, God is bigger than some little notion. You can be a humanist, a transcendentalist, a me. You can be all of that and understand that God is real. God is not some intellectual exercise, but God is real. So what Marlon was saying then, what Ralph Waldo Emerson said beyond, and what I'm saying today, is that when we're dealing with the events of our lives right here in this land called Oklahoma, when we're dealing with where we are as a people in this state, we have to say the reason why we remain. And the reason why we remain is that God's not finished with us yet. God is saying to us, church, I have called you to go and do, but you got to stay on it. And you can't stay on it if you don't believe in me. You hear what I'm saying, church? Because God is saying, I'm with you. It's going to be tough out here. The struggle is hard. You got too many people who are saying, no, we just need to take it back. Take America back. I say, take us back where? How far back we going? You know? You got those folks who are saying, the founding fathers said, and therefore we must, and you know, wait a minute, hold that time out. Did you know John Adams, one of the founding fathers, was a Unitarian? Did you know that Thomas Jefferson was a closet Unitarian? It was tough with him trying to reconcile that slave thing, you know. He said, you know, he had one foot in, one foot out, but he had good ideas. Thomas Jefferson had good ideas because he understood. He just said, my flesh is weak. Amen.